also from the orphanage in Shangri-La.
To create jobs for kids who are underprivileged.
In this past winter, I visited the fabled city of Shangri-La in China's Yunnan province. Shangri-La's real name is Songtsen, and it is nestled in the snow-capped mountains on what is called the ancient Tea Horse Road, or Chama Gutao, that connects the trade routes between ancient Europe, the Middle East, India, Southeast Asia, the northern reaches of Mongolia, and Greater China to the Tibetan lands. The town is home to the Ganden Sumsenling Monastery, the second most important Tibetan shrine after the Potala Palace in Lhasa in Tibet. It is often called the Little Potala Palace, where priests can still be seen practicing their religion as in ancient times. But the highlight of my trip was an almost accidental visit to the Shangri-La Highland Craft Beer, a homegrown brewery located just outside the city. Almost in the middle of a rural expanse perched 3,500 meters above sea level was this brewery that was putting Yunnan and the Tibetan people on the world map. The 3 million bottles of craft, lager and dark beer produced annually in this still fledgling brewery had even won several international awards, including the European Beer Star Competition, the Brussels Beer Challenge, and the China Beer Awards. There are in total about 6.5 million Tibetan people worldwide. 6.3 million live in China, mostly spread across Tibet, Sichuan, and Yunnan provinces. A small number of Tibetans had migrated to India during turbulent times and from there on to the West. The story of Shangri-La Brewery is the story of one such Tibetan family who had found themselves as migrants in Switzerland, coming back to reintegrate with their own people in the city that they were originally from. The most important feature of the brewery is that it employs 28 Tibetans, almost all from the same orphanage set up by the founder's mother. That is a story in itself. I asked to meet Songtsen Gyalzur, or Sonny as he is fondly called by everyone around him. And as it turned out, Sonny was stuck in Switzerland for this interview because of the global pandemic of 2020. But we were finally able to connect online on a video call, and he recounted to me the fascinating story of his own journey, why he even wanted to build a brewery, how difficult it was to deploy native Highland barley, the benefit and the prestige it had brought to his people, and how he plans to grow it further. So thank you very much, Sonny, for speaking with us. You were not born in Tibet, or you were Tibetan, but you were not born in China, you were not born in Yunnan, but your family comes from that part of the world, right? So let's start with that, is the story.
First of all, I would like to say, Ibi, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to talk about our story and about our brewery here in Shangri-La, right? And you're absolutely right. I look Asian, I look Tibetan. So I'm born in Switzerland and grew up in Switzerland. I had the chance to set up my business in Switzerland. I studied real estate development and had a lot of luck to set up my own company, and I ran that company quite successful. And so until 32. But then, with 32, I started asking myself, maybe this is not the end, maybe there's something else. And that's why I decided to do a round the world trip for more than 1 year. So I was traveling around the world, and during this around the world trip, I had the chance to visit my parents. And they were living at that time already in Tibet. And they were running orphanages already since 1993. My mom was set up the first orphanage in Tibet in 1993. And during my time in Switzerland, I was not really involved in the social work of my parents. I knew that they're doing that, and they're doing that with a lot of passion, but I was more into this entrepreneur and the business world here in Switzerland, right? So, but I had the chance to visit that and also visit my roots, because I knew that I'm coming from Tibet. And so, yes, and during my around the world trip, I decided to go to Tibet and visit my parents. And that was a game changer for me.
Now, your parents were themselves part of the huge changes that has taken place in Tibetan society over time, right? So give us a little background on your parents.
So my parents, they were both born and raised in Tibet, and my father's side, my father's family, they were like in Shangri-La at that time. They were like landlords and traders. They were doing the ancient tea horse route, the Chamagudao at that time. And and then they had, during the Cultural Revolution, they didn't have the chance to go back from India to go back to Tibet, and then they moved to Switzerland. The story of my mom is different. She lost her parents, and she came as an orphan to India. And then with the Swiss Red Cross, she had the chance to move to Germany, and she was raised in a Rudolf Steiner school in Germany, right? And then they met each other in Germany, and then they moved together to Switzerland, and I have and set up a family. I have a younger brother, so 2 sons, and yeah, that's the background story of my parents.
A 32-year-old Swiss entrepreneur, successful man going around the world is such a Swiss thing to do. Your parents are traditional Tibetans. At which point did they decide to go back to Tibet and start the orphanage? Because I think the orphanage and the character of your parents are an integral part of this story.
It started actually when my brother and me, we came into the teenage age, right? She was looking for her roots because she was an orphan herself, right? And she had always the feeling that she has to give something back for all the opportunities that she had in Europe, but a lot of people don't have it in Tibet, right? And so she always wanted to give something back. I still remember my parents had a lot of talks about this idea of my mom to set up an orphanage, because we had the chance, my parents had the chance to travel in Tibet, and they saw a lot of orphan kids and street kids there. But at that time, in 1993, China was not the same as it is now. It was much, much harder. And a lady from Switzerland with Tibetan roots going back to Tibet and opening an orphanage, that was something which is at that time unbelievable for the society. But my mom is a very strong person, and my father, she supported her, and they decided that she should do that. And it was like an inner call, and she moved to Tibet, and she took the pension of my father and started this orphanage, the first orphanage in Tibet, with a lot of help of local people. They supported her, and she had the chance to build the first house with the first 7 kids, and from them it was like ongoing, yeah.
And how big did the orphanage become eventually?
She started with a very small house. She built it by herself outside of Tibet in 1993. It grew quite fast, right? So in the end, we had over 300 kids, and we built another orphanage in Shangri-La, which is the hometown of my father in the east of Tibet. And yes, so we had normally always around 60 to 80 kids in these 2 orphanages, yeah. And then later, my mom founded an NGO, and other people in Switzerland, they helped her with this project, and it was running very successfully. And I think she made a big impact on a lot of lives of underprivileged kids in Tibet.
The Tibetan people in general in China today are a very stable community, right? There are about 6.5 million Tibetans, 6.3 million in China, and in my own visit to Yunnan and also to Tibet, I saw how progressive the rural areas in China are today, right? But take us back to the year when the 32-year-old young man, with not a care in the world, turns up in Tibet at his mother's orphanage. What happened then?
I was traveling around the world, and then it was a wish for me to visit my parents, of course, in Tibet, and I want to see Lhasa, I want to see the Potala, etc. It was always like, we always hear a lot of things, but we didn't have the chance to go there. So I had this chance, and I came to Tibet, and my idea was actually that I wanted to stay there for a month, and then travel to India, and then later to Africa. So I arrived in Lhasa at the orphanage, and I still remember you entered the store, and then 30 kids running towards you and they're hugging you, you know? And I was so overwhelmed by everything. And because I don't know the kids, but I realized that the kids, they really know everything about me. And they were looking at me as their real big brother is coming home, right? And I was really overwhelmed by all that joy. And the next couple of weeks, I started realizing what I didn't before. I started realizing what kind of project my parents had and how wonderful that project actually is, right? Because it was not, when you have orphanage in mind and you see always, you have this feeling of this orphanage that you see in the movies, etc. But it was really like a big family. And I won so many sisters and brothers in a short time, and that was amazing. And especially when you start hearing the background stories of each and every kid, right? Then you feel very, very blessed. First, that you had a life in Switzerland like that, and second, that you have also a chance to have an impact on their lives, right? So, and that was the reason why I skipped my whole plans to travel further, because my mom, she was scolding me and she said, I'm a very selfish person because I'm just looking for me. And now you have a big family and they need your help, right? So you should actually do something for them also and don't be so selfish, right? And that was the time where I made the decision to stay longer and to try to support the orphanage.
Your mother just passed away at the tender age of 69 last year because of COVID. We extend our deepest, wishes to your family, because very clearly this was an amazing woman and a woman who gave you the zest for life, which you then built into Shangri-La Brewery, right? And I hope that the family is taking it well.
2020 was really a year of change. It was a shock, absolutely unexpected, but in the meanwhile, we had some time to think about it. And as I said before, we really think that my mom, she really achieved everything what she wanted to do in her life. And especially the orphanage, that was the main and the most important project in her life. And she did that over the last decades, and she did it very successfully. That was one thing. 5 years back, she gave the orphanage back to the government. So the government is running it. And the reason why is that she's saying that in 1993, China and also the rural areas in Tibet, they were in a different situation. But nowadays, as you saw also, it's a different situation, and we think, and she believes, that the government can take care of their own orphanage, etc. So it took some time, the transition, but she was really happy in the end that she could finish this orphanage and give it to the government in that way that she wanted. So that was something which was really important. Then she was working on her book, and she was writing this book and published this book, and she did that also. And then suddenly this COVID came, and I still remember when we were sitting in the living room here in Switzerland and we saw this news in China, and I said to my mom, this will be over soon. It will be something like the swine flu before. And my mom said to me, you will see, that will infect us for longer. And I was laughing at her. I would never at that time thought that it would impact our family in Switzerland, yeah. And it really it came like that, and she's now gone. But I think like that she had a very fulfilled life.
And your father is still part of the orphanage. He's still, he is there with you in Switzerland or in Tibet.
So my father is right now here with me in Switzerland. We are living together, but for him, he's now 82 years old, but he really wants to go back to Shangri-La. His family is there. All the kids are there. I mean, these are like his kids also, right? And now these kids have kids also. They became parents, and here in Switzerland, we are now in the second lockdown. His life is a little bit limited, right? So I fully understand that he wants to go back to Shangri-La.
So take us back to that conversation that you had with your mother, where your mother called you selfish, and the transition that it meant. There are several undercurrents. One of which is the Tibetan people. The second is the transitioning of China and the rural area of China, the rural communities of which you've been part of. And the third is your taking that orphanage culture, or rather the orphanage anchor that your mother created, and you have orphans working for you in the brewery. And so there's a sense of a continuity, a story that is unfolding here. I met one of your employees at the brewery, Ta Dolma, who was very proud to tell us that she was from the orphanage and now has a family of her own.
I'm also from the orphanage in Shangri-La. And my husband, the hand brewmaster, is from the orphanage in Hassa. So we meet each other here and we married, and now we have a son.
So let's start with the selfish young man, and at which point did you give that up, and build your family?
Should I say, yeah, it was growing up in Switzerland and having the chance to build your business. I mean, for a young person, it's like a dream, right? You have everything in Switzerland, I had the feeling sometimes that you're living in a bubble. Everything is very comfortable, right? Then you start traveling, then you're coming to Tibet. And my mom, she said like, so what kind of plans do you have for your life? I want to travel, right? And she said like, but actually this is very, very selfish because you're looking only for yourself, right? And I was not agreeing at that time because I'm sponsoring, and she meant something totally different. That she said like, if you really not waste your time, and with all the backpack which you have, with the know-how which you have, you can use your time, your life much more valuable. I have here that many kids, and it's all good, but my biggest problem, my biggest fear is when the kids are coming out of the orphanage, they are lost. And they are lost. The reason why is because in that culture in Tibet, the parents or the uncle, aunties, when the kids coming out, they're looking that they get jobs through their network, right? So when our kids are coming out of the orphanage, they have absolutely no network. So they don't get jobs. In my company in Switzerland, I had always internships, right? And as she said, like, we have this dual system in Switzerland so that you learn what you want to have as a profession later. And she said, if you can implement something like that, that would really have a big impact on the kids' life, especially the kids who are maybe not so good in school, right? Because the guys who are graduating from university, they will find the job. But especially the kids who are maybe not so good in school, etc., they have problems really to find good jobs, right? And yeah, it took me quite a while to really change my whole thing and say like, hey, I'm changing my life. I'm staying here and trying to build something like that for people which I actually don't know at that time. But as I said, I was overwhelmed by all the feelings which the kids were giving me at that time. And I thought like, I have the chance and the ability and the time to do that. Maybe I should do that. And that was the starting point of my journey in Tibet and especially in Yunnan. So right. the first thing I asked my mom, I said like, what should I do? She said tourism is a big thing in Tibet. So maybe yes, you can do something related to tourism. And then she said like, why you don't open a restaurant? And you teach the kids how to run a restaurant, but in a Swiss way, right? So with education, how you have to keep bookkeeping, how you have to manage the kitchen, hygiene, etc. And I said, I have no idea about restaurant business. And she said like, yeah, you will do it, you can do it. I bought the flight ticket back to Switzerland and bought all the books, right, about how to run the restaurant. I flew back and I started really like with the first five kids, take over a place, renovated that and started running. It was really a big success. And that was the time when I realized I like to drink beer and And I didn't get a good beer in Shangri-La at that time. There was always this Chinese lager beers, very light and
Light.
tasty.
Yeah.
Maybe we can expand our business and try to make beer, because in the meanwhile, I realized that especially the boys who were in the restaurant, they were not very motivated to work. And the girls, they were more motivated to work in the restaurant. And when I came up with the idea, let's make beer, the boys were like, yeah, let's do beer. The reason why I wanted to make beer was during my studies here in Switzerland, I had roommates, and they were making beer in our kitchen. And I knew that it's not so hard to make a beer, right? So when they can make beer in our kitchen, it's possible to make beer in a restaurant. And then it started from there. Then we bought a little equipment with 200 liters per batch, and started brewing beer. And I read all the everything what I could find about brewing beer, and tried to make beer there. But it didn't work out. I couldn't make a good beer. So, and then I thought, like, I need more help. So I found somebody, a former brewmaster, Freddy Staff in Switzerland. And I asked him and said, like, would you come to help me in Shangri-La to make beer? And he was just retired and had a lot of time, and said, like, this is an adventure. I will come.
Adventure. Yeah.
Yeah. So he came, and he actually taught us how to make beer, a proper real beer. But on the other side, you have to get investment inside, right?
Yeah.
So I was flying back to Switzerland and asked my partners, my two partners in the business, my brother and my best friend, Philip, shall we invest into a brewery? And I said to them, look, you have to be sure about that, because it's not a low investment, but I see a real chance to combine two things. On one side, we have the chance to create jobs for kids who are underprivileged. And on the other side, we have a market opportunity, which timing is right, and which we proved already, that we can produce a product which people want to buy, and combine that together and build something out of that, right? And it was a meeting of maybe half an hour, and they said, like, let's do that. So and then we started from there. From that point, we started to build our commercial brewery in Shangri-La, and this was a process. I mean, there was thousands of stories, thousands of obstacles. I never thought it will be so hard. Now 80% of our staff are former kids from the orphanage. We are paying the highest salaries in Yunnan, and right now the brewery is run by a former kid from the orphanage. She was 4 years old when she came to the orphanage, and now she's running a brewery which is producing beer and leading that brewery through pandemic in 2020, and still have a black number in the end of the year.
It is an amazing story. And when we visited the site, it looked like an industrial site that was set aside by the government for small industries, right? Was that made available to you in 2008? Or did it come about later? And did the government give it to you at a concession rate so that you could get this business off the ground? The capital that you had, are you growing it on the back of retained earnings, or did you have to keep investing in it for a while until it was, financially self-sustaining?
When we went to the government and said, we will build a brewery, the thing was that the leaders of Shangri-La, they supported us and said, like, it's a good idea. But the whole administration in the government, nobody believed us. That's a crazy idea. How you want to build a brewery in Shangri-La? Nobody's doing that. Nobody will do that, and you will fail. That was the general information. So what happened was we had to get all the licenses for construction, etc., and nobody was really supporting us in the government. So we had always to go to the leaders, and they ordered them that they should support us. Yeah? But actually, until the first bottle of beer came out of the brewery, nobody was believing us. And another thing was that I was looking for a piece of land where we can build the brewery, but the government was saying that I can't, you have to build in our industrial zone. And I said, like, where is your industrial zone? I haven't seen an industrial zone. And they showed, here is the industrial zone, but there was nothing. It was just field. And I said, like, yeah, but here's no street, no water, no electricity, nothing. And I said, yeah, we will build later. And I said, when? And they said, like, short later, but you start. And I said, like, yeah, but I need a road. And they said, you just build your brewery and everything will come. So when we started in the industrial zone, there was absolutely nothing. And that was an experience, and I'm very thankful to my father, because my father was always like, when in our family, I said to my father, hey, father, you can be proud of me. I built now this building. I bought now this land in Switzerland. And he was always like, I'm not very impressed. If you really want to impress me, then you have to build in Shangri-La, where you're from, right? So at that time, when I had to build this brewery and there was no industry, there was nothing, I said, I can't, from a business-wise, I can't start. It makes no sense to start, right? I have to wait. And one day, and I had an argument with my father a night, and he said, why you're not starting? And I said, because of that and this and that and blah, blah. And I had a lot of reasons why I can't start. Next morning, my father organized a caterpillar and started digging on our piece of land and started building the wall for the brewery. And I couldn't hold back anymore. He said, like, now if you really want to do it, you do it now, right? And then we just did it. And then with all the problems that we had no water, we had to build our own water pipes, we had to get our own electricity, etc., etc. But we built our brewery, and then slowly everything else around us started. It was really, really difficult. And I'm still naive when it comes to doing business in China, because I thought that the whole banking system worked a little bit like in Switzerland, but I was completely wrong, because when you come and say, like, look, I have this project, we have this business plan, we have this business case, we will do it like that, and this is our money, and you think like you can lend money from the banks, there's no chance. There's absolutely no chance. So that means that I had to always invest more money than I expected. So that's why I don't believe in business plans anymore. I believe only in business models, right?
Right.
And until 2019, we didn't make profit with the brewery. So 2019 was the first time that we made a good profit, right? And we are growing now our business, but we are facing always new challenges, and but this is the way. This is the way you do it.
You're doing it for the community more than for the profit at first. How did you break that problem?
So let's go back first to this problem between to be philanthropic and do something good for the community versus doing something profitable, right? So when we had this idea to build a commercial brewery, I knew that this is something which I have to look really close into it. And I believe that if you want to do something, a project like that, that it's not an orphanage anymore. So it's a business, and the business has to be viable, right? If you can't establish a business which is making money, then you can't do good. Also, you can't have the impact into the society. Where is actually my space in the market? And when you have the triangle and you look at the business case and say, like, on the bottom is mass volume beers with a low price. I can't compete against them, right? In Shangri-La, it's not possible. We are in a rural area. So when you look in the middle level and you say, like, okay, these are like premium beers, sometimes international beers, which have a higher premium price. Can I compete against them? I said, like, no, it's really hard to compete against Budweiser and Heineken and Carlsberg. So, and then on the top floor, on the top, there's a space, and this is really the super premium, the craft, the specialty beer. And this was like open ocean. There was nobody.
Blue ocean. Yeah, I was just thinking exactly that word. You were actually looking for the blue ocean of your of your own industry, right? Keep going. Yeah.
So and I said like, okay, this is the space where I have to be. So that means actually that I can afford better quality beers to produce better, because there is a market that I can sell it for higher also. And this is something in general for the Tibetan entrepreneurs in the whole area. I believe that we have a unique chance to build businesses in the Tibetan area, but they have to rely to our culture, to our raw materials which we have there, and to make high quality, because we can create brands which are unique. So what for me was really important to build the Shangri-La beer brand was the brand also. I needed a brand strategy and a brand DNA which is really unique and different from other beers, because in the end of the day, the business of beer is you need sales channels and you need a brand, right? And then you can sell beer. So I was focusing on these two things, and that's why I think that we are on the right way to build our business. Maybe not that fast, but we are growing and we are building it stable. And this is for me important, right? So and the opportunities are big, are wide, and it depends on us what we are doing with that. And it depends now also a little bit on my team in Shangri-La to shape their future.
And over time, you've had that international recognition, haven't you? Which ones of the recognition were very important to you?
I'm very critical when it comes to my beer, right? So when I drink my beer, I always see opportunities. I always see something which is not 100%. You can improve here, you can improve there. But in general, you hear other people that say like, your beer is great, but you always doubt that a little bit, right? You all want to make it better. But when we had the chance in 2015, I think, to attend the competition, the beer competition, the European Beer Star competition in Germany. The European Beer Star is something like the Champions League. So the Champions League of beer, right? And we won with our Black Yak. We won a silver medal. That's almost like Shangri-La football team is playing in the Champions League and is becoming second. And then I realized, yes, we can brew beer, and yes, we can make a high quality product, right? And from that time, then we won different international beer awards. But the European Beer Star was really like the point where I said like, yes, we can brew beer.
China is a beer-loving country. You have Qingdao and you've Tsingtao and you've got Yanqing and so on. How are you dealing with that competition and the sophistication that's growing in China?
Of course, it's always hard, because when you have to compete with big conglomerates, with big companies, etc. But I think that really now the brand comes into play, right? So we think that we are an authentic brand, and that we are making really high quality beer. We are, and that's also a part of our branding. We believe that green is the new platinum. So green food, organic food, green, natural, and water. That's why we are sticking to that, and we keep on focusing on quality, and we want to be authentic about our brand. And this is the way I think that we have maybe a chance to compete with the big breweries.
And in terms of funding, do you see that that you would be going out to look for impact investors? I mean, you can almost configure your story as an impact investment story, and the Chinese banks will look at you better now, because you have an income, and you are making a difference in a rural community.
We had already a lot of contacts with investors which are in a way interested to invest in our business, because I think like they see the potential of this business, right? But for me, it's really, really important that if there is an investor, and he has to understand the philanthropic nature of our project. And if it's only the profitability is in focus, then I think that we have a clash in culture. But if there is somebody who says like, I know how it works because I have the experience, and I understand where you're coming from and understand my team and what important is for us, then this would be maybe a good match. We have to look at it in a bigger picture, but I think that the potential of this brewery is really big.
What is the volume?
We have the capacity of 24,000 tons a year. That is what the machines can do. But the interesting also is that we have another project. We are building our first own special maltery. So China can malt, but only the barley from outside, and only one kind of barley malt. And we have no specialty malting plants in China. So, but for the specialty beer market, for the craft beer markets, we need a lot of different kind of malts, like chocolate malt, like caramel malt, like toffee malt, the crystal malt, etc. A lot. And all these malts are imported from Germany or from Canada. So it's very expensive, very, very expensive. So we built now with an expert from Belgium, we built our own malting plant, and we start this year to malt specialty malts, right? And adding these specialty malts produced in China to our beers, and maybe we can also sell that to other specialty breweries.
As a businessman, your specialty is finding the blue ocean in in specific categories, right? So you're not a small brewery, you're somewhere in the middle, and by adding specific skill sets, how much of your beer is actually sold in the rest of China and maybe outside of China?
I look at the beer business as a local business. So I think that, of course, I made the mistake that when we started brewing beer and started selling beer, I made the mistake that we got a request from all over China to send our beers to these places, right? So, and I was not focusing too much on my local business. The offers that came in, and we started producing beer and was sending it, but I realized that this is lack of expertise. I realized that I can't control the markets in, let's say, in Shanghai or in Beijing, or I'm too far away. So what happens is that you are not able to build a sustainable business model in these places because China is too big. It's just too big, right? So, and that's why I think, like, first of all, you have to focus on your home market. That means Shangri-La. That means maybe Lijiang Dali, maybe Yunnan, but also Yunnan is already big. But this is the home market, and we are selling most of our beers now in our home market. And of course, we are sending it to the other places, but it's just, we are not trying to build a business there. We're just sending the beer and selling it there. We sell our beer also in Switzerland, right? We have a cooperation with Carlsberg, Feldschlösschen here, and we send 1-2 containers every year over and selling it here in Switzerland also. But the main focus is actually Yunnan.
What are some of the lingering things you think, or lingering maybe opportunities for the Tibetan people? Where a social entrepreneur like yourself can make a huge difference even today. What are the needs that are still there that needs to be met, you think? And this may not be anything to do with beer, but just the Tibetan people in general. Yeah.
But mom always said, and I also agree to that. I think it's education. I think this is the basis. I mean, opportunities. We have a lot of opportunities, also in rural areas, also in Tibetan areas. We have a lot of opportunities, but we are lacking on education. We are lacking. This is the base, and that's why that's why she set up the orphanage, and that's why we have the brewery. And we think that this is the place where we have to start. You have to educate them that they can develop, that they can bloom, that they can really build up and set up sustainable businesses, right? And this is where we are, what our target is.
The Chinese government did build the Qinghai University for, where lots of the Tibetan people go to finish school, right? But you're also saying that there is still a scope for education in amongst the Tibetan people.
We were always happy when our kids had the chance to go to the universities, right? So what are you studying? I'm becoming a teacher. Okay, I'm becoming a nurse. I'm becoming maybe a doctor. Okay, yeah. So where are the lawyers? Where are the business people? Where's the IT? You know, there's no lawyers. There's no business people. There's no IT. So, and I think this is in general a problem that everyone, so many Tibetan people who have the chance to go to a university, they always go into something social related thing, which is very good, and I really admire that, and it's really a need, etc. Absolutely, but I would love to see more also, which are maybe a little bit more into business, right? In economics, in IT, in law. You know, and this is too less.
But that may well be a function of generations, right? And also, with wealth, eventually, those choices will come. So what is next thing in your head, in your mind?
I mean, for me at least, is I'm very curious about the malting project. This is a big challenge. For the future, what we need for the brewery is maybe somebody who can guide my young team, a market specialist who understands the market in China, and maybe has also the philanthropic side, which is important, and also, of course, the investment that he can grow, or we can grow together this business to the next level.
And it's really wonderful to be able to hear your story of a modern Tibetan, helping to build the society that you come from, that you're a part of. And you're also Swiss, because I think that's where the precision technology thinking comes from, that makes you able to succeed in cracking through the problems of brewing beer in a place like in a place like Yunnan, right?
Yeah.
It's an amazing story already. Thank you very much, and thank you for this conversation.